Here.
Trustees Donaldson, Dykstra. Here. Camphor.
Here.
Mangian.
Here.
Schunkweiler.
Here.
Maverick.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay, you will have 5 minutes for your public comment. If you could please state your name for the clerk for the minutes and.
Sure. My name is Emily Close. I live in Champaign. I realize this is a study session, but I'm ready to finish your ordinance for the VO mobility program. So I wanted to give you some more information. For home of Illinois State University, we have a bike sharing agreement with VAO or any other company. One on for 16th. CU after suffering a traumatic head injury. The e-bike rider in this incident Illinois have a bike sharing program. ISU does have signs engraved on box as you approach quad reading dismount zone wheels red birds. I'm hopeful that the village of Savoy borrows the signage idea once you come downtown square. Second, the state of Illinois is considering more legislation to regulate e-bikes and their faster, heavier cousins, e-motos. State Alexei Janulius is launching a statewide initiative called Ride Safe, Ride Smart, Ride Ready to address the dangers of high-speed e-bikes and scooters. Janulius says e-bike injuries surged by nearly 300% nationwide from 2019 to 2022. His initiative combines public education, updated driver training, and a push for modernized road safety laws. A recent event driving the state legislation was the May 15th, 2025 death of a 16-year-old boy riding an e-bike in Mount Prospect, Illinois, who hit a pickup truck at an intersection. This fatality made it clear that most villages and suburbs have little to no governance over these vehicles and their riders. So I do give Savoy credit for stepping up and crafting an ordinance that did not exist before. Third, a new bipartisan bill introduced in Congress could create a federal framework for regulating electric bikes and other micro-mobility devices. The Safe Standards for Personal E-Bike and E-Moto Device Specifications Act aims to give the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission the authority to define and regulate e-bikes and other electric micro-mobility devices. Now, most states like Illinois use the 3-class system, which is out of date, confusing, and inaccurate. Currently, those turquoise Class 2 e-bikes, which litter the sidewalks of Champaign-Urbana and the University of Illinois, are legally defined by the state as bicycles, not motor vehicles.
was 752 pages. We actually have a lot of great information and a foundational plan as it relates to things like this, made up in our parks plan, made up in our comp plan, and then also our stormwater plan. So it was good for me to review these things, have great conversations with staff who are well versed in this. And we brought to you this report tonight with some open opportunities. And I think really the goal here is to generate discussion amongst you all, and then we can potentially come back in the future based on that discussion. So no further ado, I'd like to turn it over now to Nick to go through the slideshow for you.
Yeah, so as Andy said, we're gonna talk about parks, we're talking about stormwater. And you guys kind of discussed where you'd like to see things go. So, as Andy discussed, we got the parks master plan, for stormwater plan, free, and road comprehensive plan, 2019, supervised. So, a lot of things we're gonna talk about. Slideshow. So as we look at parks to start with. There we go. Okay, so as we have talked about parks to start with, and we look at kind of our acreage and those sorts of things, we have 97 acres in our parks. We have 4 miles of multi-use paths and walking paths. And we put up here the university golf courses are 303 acres. While it's not part of village parkland, it is a large part of green space in Savoy. Lots of other communities include their golf courses in their amount of acreage. So it's just another data point that goes as we talk about green space. So now as we're trying to compare ourselves with other the municipalities, we look at places under 20,000 people, and you look at Savoy, it is just below the median. So we're pretty close to right at that median number. But as far as residents per park, we're a little bit below the median. Yes.
I have a question here. I was doing some work
Mhm.
looking into the numbers, which we've been told is basically 10 acre, the average
Mhm.
10 acres per a person. And I wondered if this, when we look at those numbers, if it also takes into account park forest preserves or prairie areas, which as I go through certain suburbs that I look at, there's substantial number of acres contained in those. Those also help with stormwater because they have a permeable surface. And so that's, and also if we look at the United States, we are in the green area, and half of the United States or more is in a much drier region, having much less rainfall. So those calculations, as people might know, today I was had my time taken somewhere else. I wasn't able to complete those, and I didn't bring that with me. But that's why I wondered. The golf course then is a green space, but
Yes, the golf course we count as a green space. We are not counting it in our acreage or as a park, since it's not an official village.
it's not a park.
So we haven't counted it in these things. We just put up there as a data point so you could see
Mhm.
if we were to include it, where it would fall.
Okay.
Nick, just
Yeah.
another side question. In the calculation of acreage, things like the the various HOAs have some green space. Most of it's detention, dry detention. Is that counted as green? That
So we
views-
don't count it in our acreage because we don't, like in the 97 acres, it's not included in there. But it certainly counts as green space as far as you look at stormwater, and could be recreational opportunities, those sorts of things, but it's not in our official count.
Okay, yeah, and I don't think we're using any of that space as dual purpose.
Yes.
Which some communities do.
Yes,
Use
correct.
their drainage
Mhm.
space as also park space.
Yep.
When it's not wet.
So now you look at this, acres per 1,000 residents, as trustee Mangian said, the NRPA recommendation is 10 acres per 1,000, and that's across communities. And so this is clearly below 20,000. So you look at that, we are a little bit below the median, but we're pretty close to it. But if you add the golf course in, we are well above the top of the range on this. So now another way to look at park acreage and do you have enough parks and those sorts of things. Instead of residents per park, another metric that NRPA likes to use is how far walking distance do you have to get to parks. And so the goal is every resident lives within 10 minutes of walk of a park. And if you look at the maps up there, which are in the Parks Master Plan, almost all of our residents do fall within a 10-minute walk of a park. But we do have a few corners that kind of fall out of it. So we've identified those blue circles or places where parks could go that would help make sure all of our residents are within 10 minutes of a park. And on the next slide, you'll see we've kind of identified some places where parks could go. And we've talked about Liberty on the Lakes, Wilshire, Fieldstone. We're not currently pursuing anything or upgrades in those places, but as we've looked to the future where things might go, those are potential places where parks could pop up. So as we turn to stormwater, Roland is more of an expert on that than me, but I'm going to do it as best as I can, and Roland will fill in if we have more questions I can't answer. But so as they developed that master plan, they wanted to identify drainage issues, prioritize solutions, and kind of make this as a framework or a guide for how we proceed in the future to fix the stormwater issues we have and to prevent them from happening as we grow and expand. And so when you look at the stormwater master plan, there are lots of different green infrastructure facilities, and this is just a few examples of things that you can put in. So it doesn't have to be big green parks or those sorts of things. You can also use permeable pavers, bioswales, rain gardens, infiltration basins, wetlands and floodplains, green roofs. All of those are other ways to manage your stormwater. Yes.
When we look at these, I would like the consideration of how much space and how efficient they are at those goals, how much time and human effort it takes to maintain them. For example, Weaver Park is a place where the naturalists and master gardeners earn their volunteer hours. So on top of an intensive effort by the city to maintain that park, it also has many donated hours by individuals who are highly trained. So when we look at these, we should also consider what comes with that choice.
No, certainly. And you look at all of these and they can be scaled to many different levels. Like you can have a corner of your yard is a rain garden, and it's a 5x5 space, and it helps manage stormwater on your property. You can look at Weaver Park, where you've got 30 acres of natural wetland and managing those sorts of things, and that has a different account for those sorts of things. So as you look at these things, you're going to look at each sort of property and areas and those sorts of things and what fits and how you can manage it and handle it, and then you're going to look at it kind of from those perspectives. And so as that takes us here is where do you do these at? Whether they're public park like Weaver Park out there, people doing it at their residence. It also works well at commercial properties as we're installing parking lots. What can we do in parking lots to help ensure that there's places for stormwater to go and not just run off from parking lots? And so those are ways that Public Works has started instituting things through the stormwater master plan so that they can start relieving some of the issues we've had. So now as we look to acquire land for green space, whether it be for stormwater or for parks or any of those sorts of things, we kind of look at it as there's three ways to acquire land. We can purchase land, someone can give us land, or we can use the Unified Development Ordinance that we've passed. I believe that was last year. So when we look at purchasing land, single family lots range from 70 to 160,000. And as you see on the agenda for later on, we are working to purchase a lot in Prairie Meadows right next to Colbert Park, and we're purchasing that for $70,000. Now, if we were to make that a 2-acre site, you're looking more at about $450,000, and a 5-acre park, which is about the size of Jones Park, you're looking at $900,000. And then as you go south in Champaign County, if we wanted to do more as we grow, you're looking at about 15 to 25,000 an acre currently if we were to do that. So adding more spaces do parks or other things is certainly a costly endeavor, but so planning needs to be put in place if we're going to go this route. But as we look forward, there's also the UDO, which you guys passed last year, and you can go to the next one, Andy. Oh. So, and in that, you guys put in the public use space dedication requirements. So we saw that we were growing, and as we add new developments, we wanted to make sure parkland came in and was going to be in those places. So we tried to follow those NRPA guidelines we talked about earlier. So for every projected 1,000 residents that goes into these developments, the developer would have to donate 10 acres of land for park space. So as we move forward and we want to put in these new parks, we have to kind of decide what kind of spaces do we want? Do we want neighborhood parks? If what we want is neighborhood parks, those 3 to 10 acres, the UDO may suffice for what we're trying to do. And by neighborhood park, you're talking Jones Park, William A. Smith Park, Burwash Park, all would be considered neighborhood parks. So you're looking at a playground, a walking track, probably some other unique element, whether it's a baseball field or a basketball court or something else along those lines. Do we want to put in a sports complex? It's been talked about before. I mean, if you're looking at like the Rantoula Sports Complex, you're looking at 60 or 70 acres. But you can do it smaller. You could do 4 ball fields, 2 soccer fields. You're talking probably 25 to 30 acres and those sorts of land things. Do you want to do something different? If you're looking at like a Prairie Meadows, Meadowbrook out at in Urbana, that's a 130-acre complex, Prairie Restoration. It's an awesome, incredible place. And you can do things like that. But again, they're big, large endeavors. And so they take resources to make those sorts of things happen. So as we're planning, we probably would need to decide what sort of things we're trying to push towards. So as we decide what type of acreage and where we want to put them at would go. So now we're just going to kind of reflect on the things that we have been working on in the Parks Master Plan and where we've been going. So Colbert Park has been a big part of our focus. We have continued to design it. MSA has been working with us to keep designing this out. We are adding the new lot. It's a little bit south of the lake on the east side there. The idea being that we'll put in water and sewer infrastructure before the subdivision is built so that we connect to the bathroom when we're ready to build the bathroom. It'll also have a 10-foot wide walking path that'll connect to the path that we want to put all the way around the park. It'll be a nice entrance from Prairie Meadows. And so then we moved towards Jones Park, which, as you guys remember, we put an outside grant in for, but we decided to shift from Colbert to Jones about 2 weeks before the grant dedication was due. And so we were able to put this concept together, but really didn't do much more than that concept. So if we want to go for it again, I think there's many reasons for us to consider applying for it again. We'd probably do more work in designing out Jones Park, whether it be designing exactly what the playground is going to look like, more of the construction documents, those sorts of things, so we're more prepared for that grant application. I think that's another way that we could go and use our time and resources as we move forward. But as we go, we'll have to spend some time deciding, do we want to keep doing Colbert and Jones? Do we want to shift our focus towards new and different parklands? And so Andy's going to kind of talk through some of those options on how we want to proceed.
Thank you, Nick. So what we wanted to do thus far is kind of paint the picture of what we're looking at. To date with our parks and our green space. We attempted to break it down into 3 different options for you to choose from, and you can massage these options to whatever way you see fit. But we wanted to at least narrow it a little bit because, again, as noted in your 750-page board packet, there's a lot of information here. So option 1, quite frankly, is just continue status quo. We have a comp plan, we have a parks plan, we have a stormwater master plan. All of these plans speak to how we acquire, how we use, what we do to develop these types of spaces. So continued implementation again of those plans. Limited, really proactive land acquisition outside of the UDO and future development. And of course, there the cost is moderate and predictable because they're very small incremental movements and improvements as we move forward. So that's option 1. Option 2 is kind of a targeted green space acquisition. So it proactively identifies and attempts to acquire select parcels that align with the village's plans. Again, the 3 plans that I spoke of. It will focus on potentially undeveloped, flood-prone or strategically located priorities. That being those types of priorities that Nick mentioned in the previous slides where we're underserved in terms of park space. Cost there is a little more moderate. There'll be some upfront costs for planning and also some long-term costs for acquisition. We noted the types of acquisition costs that we see around here in terms of the space we may need. And then option 3 is a significant deep dive into green infrastructure planning and acquisition. So this is, we're going to really look on how we're going to acquire these spaces, and probably equally or more important, how we're going to pay to acquire these spaces, with the eye of green infrastructure being the main focus. Again, cost there is extensive due to the cost of land acquisition and of course the minimal available space that we see in our community. And so moving forward, I guess we're looking for some direction from you. We have current priorities set forth in Colbert and Jones and creating new parks through the UDO. We have our 3 plans, our master plan, our comp plan, and our stormwater master plan. And then we have these 3 options. And I do want to note that at this point, we really are kind of organically working under option 1 and option 2. As Nick noted, there's a piece of legislation in front of you this evening that that allows the village to purchase an access point into Colbert Park, which it's a relatively small square footage, but really opens up the Colbert Park space. And then we are working kind of behind the scenes on some currently not public type of acquisitions that speak to the spirit of what we're trying to do here. We want to acquire green space that ensures that we have these spaces indefinitely. And so we're doing that behind the scenes. As you note, or as you see, option 3 then, of course, mandates not only extensive planning, but also extensive investment. And so those are kind of the directions we're looking from all of you. And hopefully this information here will spur a discussion.
When you look at the 3 options, what you're talking about, expense and moderate and extensive, what does that look like in terms of, is that staff hours or plus acquisition cost?
I would say the staff, we didn't really account for staff hours. I mean, it's what we do, but I would say it's the acquisition costs, it's the planning, it's the studies, and it's the actual acquisition costs. Again, to purchase a lot was 70,000. The prices that were provided in this PowerPoint, those are actual prices of actual properties within firing range of the village of Savoy. So it's really the costs, the extent of the cost is the acquisition of the properties.
Okay, because you said, and the studies, and I was wondering what that means.
Well, I think we would, I would probably pass this on. If we're looking at acquiring flood prone properties, that we would probably want to incorporate some engineering studies. We don't want to buy something we don't want to get ourselves into. So I wouldn't probably put it on staff to maybe make certain determinations on what properties we attempt to require. So
it'd be
studies would be,
consulting fees.
consulting fees and engineering studies.
My question is, I'm wondering why option 3 is the most expensive when some of the places we may wish to acquire would be farmland if we had enough vision to acquire it early enough before other things come up or too substantially around it.
Yeah, the farmland that I quoted there is on I think it's it's Philo Road, just east of 45. So that's 5 miles from here, and that's $20,000 an acre. We can't even get local farmland owners to sell it to developers for the cost that developers are willing to pay. So within our jurisdictional boundaries, farmland is not inexpensive. I mean, it's extremely expensive. And so that's why we noted that option 3 has such high costs. There's I mean, again, I don't know, the lot in Prairie Meadows is 1/3 of an acre and it's $70,000. So
That's a developed area, so I would expect it
Yeah.
to be very expensive. Perhaps if the decision had been made, 10 or 15 years earlier, that might have cost less. So I guess that's my my idea is if we have enough vision to acquire things early enough, they would cost less.
they would. That's probably true. I think multiple tens of thousands for any ag land within our jurisdictional boundaries would be an expected rate. So yeah, that to me is expensive property, but if the board wishes to pursue those types of costs, that's clearly an option.
It seems that having enough land or green space for water to infiltrate early on would be less expensive to me because you would get an entire acre for less than what we're paying for a lot here.
Okay, well, I would love to see the staff be always on the lookout for some property that is contiguous and would work well. So I think we should always keep our eyes open and our ears open for those things. However, Obviously, it seems to me that completing Colbert and Jones and the ones we have and making those jewels, certainly preempt, getting new land. So we've got, we've got a park that is half baked, half baked, half baked, half baked, new land. So that doesn't seem, to be a good idea to do that. But again, if there's some land, you never know what's going to come up. So every administration should be on the lookout. Let me also say that land, that we have to pay 70,000 for, I can't remember the history of developers being generous as to giving us property in order to make that connection, because it would behoove the developers of Prairie Meadows to in fact help us financially for Prairie Meadows. So I always want to get a good deal from the developer for those kinds of connections, if you understand what I'm meaning in terms of that's great. It will bring more people to Prairie Meadows if we have good connectivity with Colbert Park. So I would like to make sure, and I haven't been in on negotiations, so I'd love to know, is this a really good deal, the 70? And we don't have to talk about it.
Well, he sold it to us at cost, so that's
Yeah.
a reasonable,
Yeah, at market value, you mean?
no, his cost.
His cost?
Yes.
Oh, that's not too bad. And then secondly, are there subdivisions like Liberty on the Lake that have not yet created the green space areas and said they would, or we it's just something on the radar. Yes.
I do not believe the village owns that land. I believe that it's part of Liberty
is
on the
their
Lake.
HOA
And
owns
it
it.
is a part configured in their HOA. Had we had the vision early enough on to say that that green space would be ideal for a park, we probably could have acquired that. And the developer might have left an opening to be able to build a parking lot or access to that property. But this is again a case where once something's built, we see the imminent need, but we're 10 years behind.
I guess my only point is that that's land that is contiguous with a subdivision that we can work with to make another gem of a space, whatever that looks like.
It's part of the HOA, and like any
True,
other
but
HOA,
that doesn't
would
mean
be
that
part
we
of the
can't
HOA.
help facilitate or buy it or whatever it is, or help them. I'm not creative in terms of how that would look. I'm just giving an example of land that could be a park for that particular subdivision in Savoy and be counted.
It is, but my response to that is and that's not to say we shouldn't look at it in this case, but the vision of making decisions early on saves money and allows the architecture of what entrances to the park and whatever can take place. And a lot of the parks that we're talking about developing more do have a lot of play structures and things in the parks. It's not to say more won't be better, but our parks are well used and well appreciated.
I will say that probably about 4 years ago, the HOA president did approach the village about developing that 5 acres. And if you look at the zoning map there, it's the in the middle there, that bottom part where you see the line go through. Yes, that's correct. And I think it was their understanding at the time that that was intended to be a village park. But the developer, I think, who originally went out of business, or there's some issue there. I think originally, at least what they think was it was supposed to be donated to the village, but instead it got made as part of the HOA. And the issue with that was that it would be surrounded by homes and had no access to all the residents of Savoy. And that's one of the biggest issues we had with that land right there, because if we feel like if we're going to create a village park, then everyone in the village should have access to it. And that was one of the limiting things to it. So anyway, I think Larry, you had another question.
Yeah, I love the idea of planning ahead and thinking about our future, and I think when we get what we're looking at tonight for the access to Colbert Park, you said that we'll continue to look at these places, and I'm looking at the subdivisions we have now and any new subdivisions. It's in our UDO to have open space. So I kind of look at that as we are planning ahead, because we will not get a new subdivision without having that green space, which to me is really important. My concern at this point is, and at least one or two of my fellow trustees have indicated in the past, that we have a plan, we have a UDO or a comprehensive plan. Let's stick to that. At least, I mean, things can be adjusted every so often, but let's try and go forth with what we have. And I look at, what we have now as a gem of a park, Colbert Park, and we have a great plan for that, but we can't afford to do that at this point. So I hesitate a little bit on spending money for a consulting firm or acquisition separately, that other than when, we look at it piece by piece, like we're looking at tonight with the access to Colbert. If we haven't brand new subdivision, I think we'll look at that automatically. So that's kind of my feeling about this is option one. I'd lean a little more toward the option.
Yeah, and I think to your point, we are constantly having discussions. Somebody will reach out and tell us this property is for sale or this property is for sale. And oftentimes it's, in the center of town and is already partially developed, or it wouldn't fall into this category. But when the opportunity arises, staff absolutely look to consider if it's an opportunity for us to expand, and whether that's for future use of the village or for green space, whatever that is, we won't let something fly by us if we can afford it. And as I noted, there's even some discussions now on a piece of property that would fall into this type of category. It's also, I think, important to note that while these we have a lot of farmland around us, which really is what we're talking about. And you have the airport, which, although it has 2 large runways, has a lot of space that will always be just grass space. So we are unique, unlike some of the suburbs, that we have agricultural land. Will it always be agricultural land? I mean, some developers may say yes, possibly, because it's hard to acquire it. But we continue in our current format to have a lot of green space because it's permeable land that allows moisture to absorb. So I think Trustee Mangian's point, that always won't be the case as we develop.
Wonderful presentation. I appreciate what you guys put together here. I think where we are today is where I see, the desired state. I think, we're definitely status quo. We're doing what we need to. We put some great things in the UDO. But I also think those targets of opportunity are incredibly important, right? And again, the fact that we've got some targets of opportunity out there, we should never let those go away. So I'd almost be like option 1B would be my preference, which includes targets of opportunity, but not necessarily saying that we can sit down and plan out better what those targets would be or hire a consultant to say this is what the target should be. I think I would call them targets of opportunity. So, as we had a discussion, maybe 4+ years ago or plus or minus on the, Liberty on the Lake, could that come back around? Obviously, the developer has changed hands once or more times since that original. At some point in time, there might need a new area general plan that would be needed for that property. I know there's a few other issues with the undeveloped piece that maybe they have to go back and redo their area general plan. If they're doing that, maybe there's an opportunity that the HOA doesn't want to own that land and maintain that land. They'd happily give it to us. And if in the area general plan, we could reconfigure the subdivision somehow to get access so that all of Savoy can have access to it, that's a target of opportunity rather than, putting together a comprehensive plan to say, we're going to go make this thing happen. So that my preference would be to maintain the status quo, but to look for targets of opportunity, look for places where we can do something that adds a value without having to get into hiring consultants and then putting capital aside when we have a very long list of capital needs in the village and not enough capital budget to accommodate all that. And I'm not sure we could really appropriately argue that option 3 is an appropriate use of the limited funds we have.
Wrong thing. Sorry. Okay. To work on and to finish what we currently have going. I've been wanting to see completion in Colbert Park of things that I was hoping would be there. And I know with the new plan, well, some of the old fashioned ideas I had aren't necessarily going to be a part of it. That's fine, because in talking to Nick before, I can see where what we're working toward is, old people like me are not going to be using that as much as the young families. And I think that's a good point to be working toward. Incorporating within that, I think that option 2 gives us an opportunity then to hop onto something if we see a good buy or a good piece, a good opportunity. Now, I don't think if we work just on option 1, I don't think that shuts us out from looking at option 2. And if the money is there to do something with something we might purchase through option 2, then we can look at option 3. So I'm kind of incorporating everybody's thoughts here, I hope, of saying that, all 3 options are, to me, not off the charts. But I definitely want us to start something and not finish before we start something else, I think maybe is the wrong way to go. Totally. But so I'm more in favor, I guess, of doing the status quo, but not eliminating 2 and 3.
Any other discussion? Okay, saying no.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm multitasking here, trying to get the slideshow up for the developer. But when I came on board last July, I had the pleasure of meeting with the Downtown Development Group, and we brought some of our staff together along with their team and discussed, what the future of this downtown development looked like. And I think we all mutually agreed, both village staff as well as the development group, that there was an opportunity to maybe tweak the redevelopment agreement that was created last year, only slightly, but significantly. And since that time, there's been, as you all know, a change of ownership in the group, and that only, I think, warranted more discussion as it relates to the redevelopment agreement that we currently have in place. And so that brings us to where we are tonight. And I wanted to take this opportunity to not only discuss the redevelopment agreement and amending it, but also to allow the Downtown Development Group to introduce themselves. And if I can be technologically savvy enough to bring their slideshow up to provide you kind of with an overview of where we're at. So what I will do is I will turn it over to them, and then we'll come back to me and I will summarize some of the items that we are considering amending within the redevelopment agreement. Stand by. And you'll just push the red button to talk and release it when you're done talking.
Alrighty, and you're okay.
I am.
Alrighty. Thank you all for the opportunity this evening. As you know, there have been quite a few changes internally with Downtown Development Group, as well as refinement of the overall vision. And then continuing to work with the village staff. Our goal is to continue to provide as much transparency for the trustees and have open conversations as we move things forward. So our goal today is to provide some updates and then answer any questions that you may have. we've spent quite a bit of time together over the last couple of years, but this is also a great opportunity for Jeremy to be able to highlight some of his expertise and answer any questions from the architectural and the building perspective. Alrighty, here's our agenda. We'll try and go as quickly and smoothly as possible, but please feel free as questions come up to feel free to interrupt. All right, we'll go ahead. With our leadership team, we started off where I continue to be the CEO of the Downtown Development Group. We have been established for over 4 years, incorporated specifically for this project with the core focus of building a downtown for Savoy. As you all know, we've been highly engaged with the community, and it has been a very inclusive designing process and continues to spark a lot of excitement across the village. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Jeremy to be able to speak a little bit about himself and maybe answer any questions you may have about him and his expertise, including 30 years of building construction experience.
So many of you have met me. We've had some conversations in the past. My name is Jeremy Duzan. I'm a licensed architect in Illinois and 3 other states currently. I've done work all over the country, including Hawaii, in everything from residences up to hospitals and military complexes, high rises. Have never been really stuffed in one niche. I've had various experiences throughout my career. I've lived back in Illinois since about 2014. I was in California for about 9 years for a good portion of my career. And yeah, the picture you see there is a P.F. Chang's restaurant I did in Corte Madera, California. Yeah, started doing this when I was doing construction when I was about 16 with my father. So been a long time. Wanted to be an architect since I was in 7th grade. So I'm one of the only people that's ever went to college to do what they said they wanted to and did it. So.
One of the things that really stood out as Jeremy and I continue to work on this project together, his vision of gaining experience throughout his career and then having the opportunity to come in and own something, to be able to take a project from A to Z and come in at the co-developer level, being able to execute something. So I think oftentimes we look at our why, and if it's aligning with the project, that allows us to have even more confidence in our ability to be able to complete that. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of the phases and provide an overarching timeline of where we are with the project. Obviously, everyone's very excited to see the demolition. So excited. So thank you for that. That's sparking conversation about economic development. I've received phone calls as far as businesses interested in the timeline and understanding how much residential, how much commercial is coming in, and then also obviously just fun community conversations that people are so excited to see this finally moving forward. I believe the completion of demolition and the phase 1 should be May 15th. Is that correct? Or in and around there. Our next milestone where we will be providing greater detail for the planning and entitlement phase. We're looking at the beginning of July for that. Downtown Development Group will be submitting that to you all for review. Including in that is our planned unit development. Being able to develop something with the UDO that has already passed ensures that everything that we present to you will be in alignment with zoning and requests that have been already stated by the village. It allows us to understand where and how we can optimize and maximize the layouts. And then also understand easements, parking requirements, and make sure that we are delivering something that is directly in line with the UDO. Should there be any requests for variances, those are all things that would be coming up that we would have open conversation and request approvals on should they come up. As we're moving into spring, I know actually Jeremy was quite frustrated that we were not breaking ground this spring. And I see that as a very positive thing. Breaking ground spring of 2027 is really exciting to say publicly and out loud. So at that point, we will start our construction with the goal, as stated in the RDA, of having final construction completed within 3 years of the approval of the PUD. Go ahead. Yep. So I couldn't help myself. I took my boys over to the demo site, and I think it's really just a moment as a resident and a community member to really understand the work that we're doing here and the impact that it'll have for our residents, for our community, and the economic development and sustainability of our community. As we're having conversations, questioning how we're funding our parks and additional improvements for our community, I'm very hopeful and optimistic that this downtown project will have a very positive impact on that, as far as ability for Savoy to make and continue to make improvements in the future. Again, when we're looking at planning entitlements, some of the work has already been done. Reviewing and ensuring that the general area plan, the preliminary plat, and then the PUD are submitted. These will all be formalized and submitted the beginning of July. As we're going through final approvals and final verifications, that is on us to ensure that we are submitting and recording the site plans, that it is truly reflecting on the agreed upon vision. In addition to that, really addressing the financial aspect of this project, including the total project budget and proof of financing for the project budget. When we're looking at kind of our next phase there, that's where we get to actually roll up our sleeves and, well, Jeremy mostly rolling up his sleeves and starting our construction phase and moving forward with that. So with this, yes, this is a very big, exciting project. It's going to be highly impactful. We understand that there's a lot of trust that is given to us to drive this project forward. One piece to note is that as we are submitting and designing and implementing, all of that is within checks and balances of the UDO zoning and approvals of the village staff, and obviously you as well as the trustees. So project completion, our timeline is to break ground spring of 2027 and hopefully have the final project fully completed within 3 years. Yep, go to the next slide, please. One of the things I do want to point out, we'll be showing some images here, especially our aerial view of an updated layout. What can be a little challenging is an aerial view in contrast to the street view. I intentionally put the street view that we're working off of as the main picture here, and then some smaller examples to the side. When we think of a downtown, we're thinking about higher density, a variety of different storefronts, awnings inside, signs out, and a lot of activity. We are not constructing a strip mall. So I wanted to take time to make sure that as we're reviewing some of these images, our minds didn't just jump to that. So Andy, if you want to move forward. Right now we're looking at our general area plan, our layout, providing 2 main focuses. The first one coming down Route 45. We'll have storefronts on they'll have access for the Route 45 site, as well as the internal side, we can call that the park side, and then coming up Church Street. So as this land progresses and we're balancing some of the factors, including parking, accessibility, retail, residential and commercial, as well as traffic flow. Those are all components that we're working on to make sure that we can deliver as quality of a product that will be as successful over time. Go ahead. One thing to note as we transition from the drawing into the aerial view, I really want to focus on this cut through. So imagine yourself standing at the intersection at Church and Dunlap. This is right at the corner. The design that we are currently working through has a cut through. This allows us to provide additional housing or professional services on a second and third level here. When we move to the next slide, again, cut through, very important for this reason. If I were to start and show you this image, it would not be outside of traditional thinking of saying, gosh, this just looks like a big block. So when we're looking at our aerial view and see the cut through at the corner of Church and Dunlap, and then coming down Church Street, and as you're turning onto Wesley, there is another cut through down Wesley. You'll be able to see the traffic flow. That way we can have accessible parking for residents, and also being able to support our business owners with that wonderful challenge of trying to provide enough parking so that everyone can be successful and economically stable, but at the same time avoiding that presence of strip mall feel. Go ahead and move to the next one. When we're breaking things down of what this project will do, we're looking at 70 apartments. We're looking at a total of over 100,000 square footage of residential and commercial. Traditionally, we're looking at commercial being on the first floor, perhaps some professional services on the second floor, and or a combination of residential apartments. At this point, we're mostly looking at 2-bed and 2-bath, high to mid-level apartments with the price point about not locked in, but about $2,000 per unit. Building out the financial model for this, we have been looking into very recent activity with the mixed use buildings, and also looking at different threats and opportunities. So if we're looking in comparing this project to Carl at the Fields, their residential apartments booked up a lot faster than their commercial. We want to try and build as much sustainability in this project as possible. And that's why we have the balance of both commercial and residential. We are in one of the highest population density percentages when we're looking at available housing. And I'm a little frustrated that I didn't include that graph. When we look at what housing and rental options are currently available in Savoy, we are at anywhere from 85 to 95% saturation, which can be very, very challenging for our, yes.
You said traditionally,
Mm-hmm.
the first level would be business, second level could be, and third level would be apartments.
Yeah.
Does that mean not necessarily?
No, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
The traditional would be if we have a high demand for professional services, if it's tutoring offices or therapy offices, if there's businesses that are interested in that second floor, then that allows us to have an opportunity to lease out commercially. Or if we are seeing a lot more pull into the residential, then those also would be flexible to be residential spaces. There will be with ADA code, and Jeremy can speak about that. We want to ensure that we have absolutely addressing ADA requirements for first floor apartments that actually will have access on the park side for the apartments. Jeremy, I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, so the street side approach to all of these buildings would all be retail or commercial. The backside, if we work in apartments on the first level, there's a few things we avoid with some code requirements as it relates to the Fair Housing Act and the ADA accessibility and things. which helps us to negotiate some of our costs with construction of the building and things. So all of the apartment access would be on that internal courtyard side though. Not a direct door to the apartment from the exterior, but into a corridor for, a little more secure access in like a stair tower. So then that stair tower would be utilized by the apartment people on that first floor all the way up to all floors, and then also the commercial spaces could use at least the first floor for their services coming into their space. Thanks. One of the things I've tried to eliminate for the most part is an abundance of elevators. The original plan had 5 buildings and they all have 5 had elevators. An elevator that adds about at least $350,000 to your project right off the bat. And that can sometimes kill a project pretty quick. If we have an elevator, it's most likely right on the corner here on the front, right at the corner of 45 and Church. And it may be that we have to implement that for the sake that the upper apartments will be a little different arrangement or design. And that'll be something that, when we go through the planning stage, when Andy and I start looking at that, then we'll have to discuss, what the interpretations are of, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on the first floor. If we have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on that corner, does the first floor accommodate that as far as a reasonable, similar experience for a person? Or are we creating a condition where this is a grandiose apartment that, they have to have access to, by which, we'd have at least that one elevator. So there's a chance for an elevator, but, and if we put an elevator in, which we're kind of leaning in that direction, if we do an elevator, then that opens up opportunity to have rooftop dining, where they could, or rooftop access for the occupants of the building, so they could, watch events that are done in the stage in the backyard and things. And it just kind of opens up some new avenues. So it's not out of the question for at least one, but we are trying to avoid as many as possible. The first floor. Well, it's right now I've got, I believe, 6,000 square foot accommodated. Yeah. Oh, was it 8,000? 8,000? It's roughly 8, yeah. And that could, right, that could vary depending on, if we add some. So if we have a 2-bedroom, a 2-bath upstairs, we have to have one on the first floor. We have a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, we have to have one on the first floor. So we have to accommodate that to some sense. So that'll dictate how many apartments actually fall into that first floor, because we're trying to accommodate the retail space as much as possible too. So no, they're just on the
Right.
backside. So it's all retail on the front 2 storefronts. So.
So zooming out, and we're really looking at the economic impact and where this falls with the TIF. I am viewing this project as the catalyst that starts to jumpstart additional development in our community. So I have the updated TIF maps, and I think the middle one, I'm trying to think if there have been any updated changes to that. But with the overlay, this is the first of hopefully many economic development changes that we see in Savoy. We understand how critical it is that this project is successful for the continuation of development for our community. In doing so, we want to make sure that what we're putting in has some fail safes as far as the commercial versus residential. When we're addressing the accessibility, ADA requirements, and mixed use, there will be mixed use throughout the building. So having it be more of a continuous feel gives us a little bit of flexibility of where we can put in apartments, and then also where we can put in commercial. But absolutely the main focus of this is creating the downtown for commercial use, especially on the first floor. Activating that middle green space to give our wonderful, vibrant community a place to gather. This will be the third space in our community, home, work, and a place to play and gather, whether you're there eating, drinking, playing, or just spending time in the center green. Opportunities for additional events. Andy, if you want to jump to the next slide, envisioning a way to capture the diversity that's in our community as well, and a chance for us to really highlight the diverse population and different cultures that make up Savoy. Again, being able to run different programming, different events, and being open to continuing to engage with the village, Parks and Rec, and keeping communication open as we continue to build this out. And happy to take any additional questions or go back through the slide deck if we can provide more information on any of the areas that we covered. Yep. Right. So as it's broken down, first floor would be, we're looking at a breakdown of 6,000 square feet for apartments on the first floor,
27,000.
27 on the first floor.
Commercial space.
Mhm.
And then your upper floors would be 33,197. Sorry, that's the first floor.
Yep.
Second floor would be 37,990, and so would the third.
And based on demand, that's where the second and third floor can either go, and the ratio can be changed to residential or commercial, as long as that we're meeting accessibility to ensure that everyone has access. Should there be public space, should there be commercial space up there on the second or third floor? Mhm.
Couple other quick questions. I mean, I know this has changed a little bit, and I just want to express my concern that I would just want to make sure that it doesn't look like it's a problem, but that the event space, still feels enclosed, whether it's by trees or because you have that open north and west side that emotionally might feel too open and not as a downtown space. So that's just one thing. And also that the event space doesn't change so much as to not be available for programming. I mean, I don't know, the fountain's nice. I don't know if that blocks anything and placement of the gazebo, but that's an important part of it for Savoy. And also on a emotional level, you mentioned it a couple of times. So tell me what defines a strip mall as opposed to, I mean, you mentioned something about strip mall and I just want, how do you differentiate that? Just
So a strip mall by definition would be, you know, a long strip of only retail stores on the back side of a property, where on the front edge of the property is full parking lots leading up to it. You know, and sometimes, you know, up the street here, you'll see the strip malls in the back. There's a large parking lot, and then there's, you know, offset stores that'll come in, and ahead of that, that's a typical strip mall arrangement. With just about all strip malls, you won't see apartments in this fashion on top of that. It's just one level all the way across in a mall format.
so this is more successful because it's 360
Um,
in other words?
in,
It's more successful because, well, it's more diverse. You know, you're bringing in, you know, from a building standpoint, you're bringing in more sources of revenue to that complement each other. And, you know, with the street side, building the downtown by creating these intimate spots here, you know, we're drawing in the outside population density to visit here as well. And I think there's a very high need for retail space in Savoy right now.
just to touch on that as well, when we're looking at the style of the build, when we're looking at kind of C-level commercial build out, a strip mall would be a much lower quality in the facade, in the materials, in the overall presence. So really the main goal of that would just be vanilla box, commercial space, maximizing parking and convenience. We're committing to no drive-throughs. We're committing to not the strip mall feel of this, but really taking into consideration, how do we build the look and feel so that this can absolutely function the way we need it to function, but also have that look of a downtown. Andy, if you want to jump to one of the other images. Sure. Yep. One thing that we'll see is intentionally creating different facades. So the style of the windows will change on each of the storefronts, really allowing there to be still an overall cohesive look to the project, but having the variation that you would expect for walking on a downtown. Anytime you're walking downtown Champaign or different areas, I hope you now notice where you'll see entranceways for apartments kind of going in, or note when the buildings change in either their brick style or the color or the different facades for them. This allows us to create that unique feel of a downtown that is very different than a strip mall.
Well, in fact, most downtowns, if you walk down the street, every building is lined up right on top of each other all the way down the sidewalk. Part of the reason of undulating that front face is so that we're creating a space out in front of the shop so that you can put seating there. If it's a coffee shop, you can have, you know, a little more space to get 3 or 4 tables, where in an old style downtown, they put them right on the middle of the sidewalk. So you gotta walk around people, you know, because there's just not the room between the street and the building. So I'm trying to kind of, you know, build for the future of what it could be, you know, moving forward, and give it more flexibility, but also maintaining some green space, which you don't see a whole lot of that in a lot of downtown. Champagne's an exception. They've done a good job of, you know, working in some green spots here and there down along the street front, but a lot of smaller municipalities don't have a lot of that. Still has variations.
Yeah, real quickly, I was approached by pretty much all the election judges last election, and they mentioned that, and I don't have a lot of ownership in this, but they had a really good point. They'd rather this was called a village square, that this isn't technically a downtown as we might think of it. I don't know about the branding. I'm just going to put that out there in terms of what people might, going forward, we have certainly time to think about what it's called. So I just leave it there.
I think that's an interesting point in not overdeveloping the space as well, recognizing that this is for Savoy, that quaint, quintessential experience. While we want to provide additional housing and opportunity for economic development, there's also that awareness and balance of not overdeveloping the space. There's a reason why we're not putting the downtown skyscrapers in Savoy. and yet providing what we believe is going to be a really nice fit for the community. Some of the other images that Jeremy's working on also show the variation in the step back of the frontage for each of the different buildings, and it adds even more variety and a different feel. So we're excited to continue to pursue different ways of how do we make this very unique while not overdeveloping, and it truly continuing to have the branding of Savoy. Mhm. Andy, would you mind putting the slide with the TIF on there? And Heather, I'm so glad that you brought that up. This is really, I was hoping to try and touch on that point with this slide where we're saying this is our starting point today. And when we look at the overall area of where there is availability for continued development throughout the TIF, and then also crossing different ways where we're not, not just limiting it to the TIF, but that really, I think, shows that this vision can continue to grow across Main Street, which is north of our lot, and it can also go south. All four corners are included in the TIF, so there's about 25 years left in the TIF that hopefully can continue to spark redevelopment in this area.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I noted, this was, we had two goals tonight. We've just accomplished the first one in your introduction to the Downtown Development Group, the new partner, as well as their vision. The second one now is to discuss the components of the redevelopment agreement that we are considering amending. And there's 7 of them, and I'm just going to go down the list briefly. I can answer any questions once I touch on them. So the first one is probably the most significant. It's changing the publicly owned event space. As you may recall previously, this mandated that once the development was completed, that the, we'll call it green space, the center space, the public space, was then given back to the village to not only own, but then maintain and provide upkeep. For numerous reasons, both the development group as well as the village feel that the best path forward is to ensure that that remains with the developer. First of all, the village would have to maintain, mow the grass, cut the trees. If there's a fountain, make sure the pump's running, right? All the things. We are already, of course, dealing with limited staffing, and that would just be an added area that would be the responsibility of the village. But I think most importantly, the developer has an absolute vested interest in ensuring that that space not only looks beautiful because people want to be there, but also that it operates in the type of way that we've discussed tonight. They want things to happen there. They want events to take place so that those people go to the businesses within their buildings. And so I think the developer really has the best interest in that space in mind to ensure that there's concerts. There's all the things that we want to see there happen. We aren't in the event planning business. You surely don't want me to plan your evenings out. And so we recognize that as a great opportunity for the developer to keep that space. It lessens the obligation on the village and ensures that, of course, their vested interest in making that space robust continues. So that's the first change. The second change really is just a change, and Marissa noted it in her timeline, but July 2nd, 2026, that date isn't actually in the original agreement. So we just want to codify that date. The third is another date that extends the period of time in which the developer must submit proof of financing to the village to March 30th of 2027. And so that triggers that I believe it was phase 4, but effectively the start of construction. The last kind of logistical step that the developer has prior to construction is providing proof of finance to the village. We're kicking that out a little bit for a lot of reasons, but we mutually agree that that gets us past the winter. The developer will be ready to go and have their financing in place. The second, number 4, as you probably have all seen, we have demoed the buildings on the property except for the pole barn. And that is a two-prong. First of all, the village used it over the winter to store equipment. It's a good, strong building that suited the needs of the village and our public works department. But also, the developer has interest in using that for the period of time that they are able to use it to be their base of operations, if you will, between now and when they start construction and when that building ultimately gets in the way. Important to note that when that building ultimately needs to be moved or removed, the developer then is on the hook for that and the village is not. Updates to the number of parking spaces. The original redevelopment agreement, I believe, had 80 something parking spaces, which is far too low based on our UDO. And I help with visuals. Help me if you are familiar with the strip shopping center at Madison Springfield, where the Starbucks is. There's right around 70-ish spots in that development, and so clearly 80 something spots would not be enough for the 100,000+ square feet that we are speaking to here. So no less than 156 is our most recent calculation. Of course, there's some variables to that, but ultimately what's important is that this just ensures that it's based on the village's UDO. So if, for instance, they add X, our parking may change going up or down to ensure that it meets the UDO. We want to have enough parking so people go here so they spend their money and they have a place to live. It's very important. Sorry, I skipped the pole barn. Apologies. I have the pole barn maybe twice. The last, and I think probably most important, it goes back to number 1, the dormant special service area. So that component was added. If we're going to ensure that the developer keeps the space, the green space, the public space vibrant, clean, and maintained, we want to have some protections on our end for that space. And so our attorney, specific to our development, recommended that we implement a dormant special service area. And effectively, if the developer or the owner of the property doesn't maintain it, we can implement taxes and effectively pay for the development or the maintenance of that space. So it's a protection for the village, essentially, if we choose to keep that space with the developer. Hopefully I articulated that well enough. So those are the only amendments that we're asking for in the redevelopment agreement. Your options, of course, are to amend it as presented in your red line version. They are to come back to us with recommendations related to any of these changes if there's something you may not like. And then the third option is ultimately we can continue to operate under the redevelopment agreement as written. So I'm now willing to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, on the green space and how that's handled, I probably between now and next week can learn more about that without taking more time here. However, it might be very useful if that was separated from the other amendments that you put forth, which to me would have a positive. If that is an event space and that is downtown Savoy, it seems like that event space should be under the village's purview.
Andy, go through all the changes. I'm in agreement with all the changes that are proposed. And I do like, I don't know who came up with the dormant special service area as a way to make that work as a, for the when we first started the process, I was involved with some of the early discussions. It wasn't until before we approved the current version that we actually flipped that to being publicly owned. It was entirely intended from the start of the development to be privately owned, but to be a space that the community could use. Because of some of the ways that things were structured previously that have since changed, you know, the desires to move back to actually where we started with the plan, which is the developer owns all this land. And we're going to want them to put something together that includes a public space, and provide for, you know, events that would happen there for, you know, people to gather, what have you. I think this meets the intent. This actually goes back to where we started. We took a little diversion for a while, but it's not something that bothers me at all, that space is owned. In fact, you know, in some of the earliest discussions and before we even got Downtown Development Group on board, as we were talking to others, most of the time the developer wants to be in control of that because they're going to maintain it to a higher level than we are. I mean, if it's public land, we're going to cut the grass like we do the parks. And that's great. I mean, our parks look outstanding, and this is not a knock on, I think we maintain land incredibly well, but they're going to want to make sure it's meticulously taken care of. They're going to want to make sure that before there's an event that special things are done, and they're not going to want to rely on going to somebody else to get that done. That was how we originally proposed it. When we talked to developers, that's how it was originally envisioned. We did change that along the way because of some things that are now overcome by other events. So I don't have any issue at all with the direction that it's going, and I do like the dormant special service area as a way to ensure that the village isn't going to get stuck with some sort of abandoned eyesore that we don't have any way of taking care of in the future. So I think it's a nice blend of, you know, what is the right way to run a space like this on private land so that events can happen and it doesn't require the village to be out there trying to book people to come in and have little shows on the property, because quite frankly, none of us are going to do that, and it's not our job. But certainly we could, you know, say, hey, so now that you've got, you know, this program up and running and there's little bands or there's folks coming to town, you ought to think about reaching out to this, you know, this little group to come and be part of the show. And I'm sure they would happily take our suggestions.
That was going to be my question. What does it look like if there is a disagreement, someone wants to have an event, and can that be vetoed by the development company? I'm just not sure how that looks, if it's if it's a protest, or if it's a concert. How does that, like, even if it's a completely paid, everything's paid and they want to have it on that property, how does that work in practice?
Right. So looking at it as privately owned land, it'll be privately managed, everything from insurance, event setup, tear down, management, and we would oversee all of the events in that space. Having an open and transparent and positive relationship and continuing that with the village, our goal would hopefully have those events serve the village. So the success of this project is serving the community. Having it be privately owned allows us to ensure that our tenants, both on the commercial and residential side, are protected from public events happening in their own backyard, but us being able to facilitate them at times and types of events that we know will complement the businesses and the residents who are living in those apartments as well. It would be fully owned, managed, paid for, insurance provided, and again, like the physical space, the land itself, as well as the events on it, that would all be under our oversight.
So that works really well if everyone agrees, and the developer agrees to pay insurance.
Well, we'd have to, and just like I can't throw a party on your front lawn. I mean, I could, but you'd probably kick me out after 11. But you know, it just depends. I mean, and these are very, very real conversations as we continue to build this out. This is all new. We're going to be exploring this together. The goal is for it to be successful, but private land also allows us to have a level of protection. Should there be activity on that land, we are responsible for that. So if there's a gathering that shouldn't be happening and it is not under our approval, then that's a violation of being on our public land. Private land, you guys get to play with that. So there's pros and cons of both. I think for me, really looking at the private land, when we think about the true development and we're laying water and sewer and electric and internet lines, having 9 different parcels serving different aspects of 3 acres adds a lot of complexities. Should there be a water main break in the middle of the publicly owned park, but it's impacting our privately owned buildings, adds a lot of complexity to not only the build, but also the management and maintenance of that as well.
I do have one last question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused. So July 2nd, 26 is the last possible date to get the plan that, according to this. Is that right? July 2nd, 26 for the PUD and the final plat. And then before March 30th of next year, there has to be bank commitments. And then maybe I skipped a couple steps, but the 3 years, it has to be completed 3 years from
The
okay.
PUD being approved so that,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's actually, it could be less than 3 years from March.
Yeah, the goal would be to complete it earlier.
That is a good-
One of the things is that just our weather, the seasonality of construction times. We have to only be able to develop when the land will allow us to develop. And that's actually one of the main reasons why we had to move the timeline. In addition to that meeting with, very excited to share that a lot of our local banks are interested in being supporters of this program. Their timelines generally, originally we had thought 30 days for them to approve financing, but from the banking perspective, they need closer to 60, if not 90 days. And that's pretty traditional with this scale of a development. Even when we get all of our homework submitted in time, the banks will still need closer to 90 days to provide that proof of financing.
And that proof of financing, part of what creates this timeline is the bank needs to see a full set of construction documents that are mostly finished, but also they want to see hard bid numbers, not estimates. They want to see what's your actual locked in construction pricing. And that time to do all of that from today till then, pretty much impossible to get done by September if we were to try and achieve that.
Still has a question.
Yeah, if you are having questions still, I'm guessing we'll just, yeah, so we'll go ahead and have this as an action item for next week. And that seemed to be what the vibe I was getting from everybody. So, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and please feel free to reach out with questions. We're more than happy to provide additional information. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we need to take a break for lunch and dinner. No. We'll go on to study session item 2026-15, an ordinance authorizing lot purchase agreement for lot 644 in the Prairie Meadows subdivision, including infrastructure extensions for a total amount not to exceed $125,000. Turn this over. I think that's Andy for this, but I will say that this is the result of a great recommendation by Trustee Mangian.
And I'm going to turn it over to Roland for this.
I almost feel like I don't have to present because it's been mentioned enough and some things talked about that you have most of the information, but we had this opportunity to look at lot 644 in the Prairie Meadow subdivision. It would provide for
Do you have your sound?
an enhanced entryway into the park. If you go over there right now, you'll see a couple of very narrow sidewalks kind of squeezed between some fences that do provide access to the park. But there's not really a nice, because that pathway in the park is a 10-foot or 8-foot path. But this would have a, a similar size connection to it. And then in addition, it allows for the infrastructure, the sanitary and water main to be brought into the edge of the park, which we find very appealing because later on, like Trustee Mangan was talking about, it's much more expensive and we'd actually have to probably tear out some street to get that accomplished. So we think this is a good opportunity to provide enhanced entry to the park and get our infrastructure ready to go for the ultimate development. We worked very closely with Nick on this, and I think that's about it. If you have any questions, myself or Nick will be able to answer those.
Roland, of the sanitary extension and the water main extension, is it only going to the property line or are they going to go into the park a little bit?
I asked them to go about 15 feet past the property line so that
Okay.
any excavation we do won't be in someone's backyard. It'll be in the park.
Okay. Just didn't see those limits on the. I might have missed it too, sorry.
I will be using this since my grandkids live like as a crow flies straight across. And I know what you mean about that, just the narrow path where you just find your way over to Colbert. So this is a nice amenity, a nice entrance way from Colbert. And then subsequently from Prairie Meadows, but then the rest of the subdivision as it gets built out can come a little bit forward and north and then go into the park. So I think this is a great addition in terms of getting to that park from Prairie Meadows area.
I agree there, but.
This is a great target of opportunity. Thanks.
Putting this as part of a consent agenda next week. Any objections? Okay, we'll include this item as part of the consent agenda and move on to study session item 2026-16, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a street sweeper and an amount not to exceed $325,000, and turn this over to Roland.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you know, we've talked about this, the current 2008 Elgin Pelican street sweeper is entering its 18th year of service. This last year, it spent between 3 or 4 months in the shop. And we really don't think that's an adequate level of service. This is something that the residents really appreciate. It's one of their most requested services. We did some looking and we found a very good unit, pretty much brand new. That is, the advantage here is this is not one of these wait for a year for it to be built, and this is on the lot, ready to bring home. And of course, they're telling us that as of May 1, the price will go up about $7,000. So that's one of the reasons, the timing that we're bringing to you now. We do think this is a very reasonable price. Some of these street sweepers, they start at about 300 and go all the way to 500,000. So we think this is a good price. The actual quote was for just 300.6 thousand. So 300,000, just a little over 300,000. We wanted approval for that extra amount. Just sometimes there's unexpected things with delivery and taxes and whatnot that we just wanted to be covered for, and we wouldn't use that extra contingency unless we absolutely had to.
So this is you say almost new? I mean, has it?
It
where-
is,
Where has it been used?
it's new. It's,
Okay,
um, pretty much on the showroom floor. I
Okay.
think it's a 2026. Yeah. Um, so, yeah, and it has some capabilities that we don't currently have, like, you can drive it from either side, which I can't explain exactly why that's important, but the ops folks tell me that's very important, and it helps, with, getting into different places easier and be able to see what you're doing.
Expand.
15 to 20 years,
Okay.
probably as much as we use it, probably closer to 15.
And how about the yearly cost to operate roughly? I mean, what do you think it?
I don't know
You know,
exactly I mean, initially you wouldn't think it would be too much because it's new. Eventually, replacing brushes and having minor maintenance done, but,
and then it's diesel, is it? Diesel?
yes.
So,
And I mean, we're doing that right now with our current one, so, uh, assumedly it'd actually be a little more efficient to have a new one, just like
right,
automobiles, so,
miles per gallon. or
yeah.
Gallons per mile, I guess. Um, so I have to bring this up. A number of cities around the country have gotten the Elgin electric broom bearer. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 600,000. It's a big neighborhood. Well, that's, and I haven't, obviously, I don't know all the specifics. But it seemed to me that there's like a 30% premium, 25 to premium on that. I look at it as there's a possible, if you consider the fuel costs, the not the amortization, the depreciation costs, electric vehicles are much less. There's much less to go wrong with them. And no fuel, basically. Let's see. So potentially it can give you can get longer than the 15, 20 years and with no maintenance. Also a little quieter. I would like to think we could look at that as an option. And I mean, there are other reasons to look at it that way, but I'm not gonna go into the whole thing. I just think there's a possible option, and I'd love to see apples to apples how it would compare with a $300,000 diesel street sweeper versus an electric one that you can plug in at the village every night.
With respect to an electric vehicle, no disrespect to Trustee Camphor, I know a lot of the equipment that we have in our fleet is able to be maintained by our in-house crew.
Right.
Does that require your in-house crew to learn how to service an electric vehicle?
I would say we don't currently have that expertise. And I've had these conversations with the trustee Camphor before. My inclination would be to kind of incrementally move ourselves into a more sustainable fleet with, hybrid passenger vehicles and maybe then electric vehicles, and then look at the large.
I might also say there could be also grants, whereas I don't know that we have any grants to get to do this, but being a fuel efficient or a zero, whatever, sustainable, whatever they call it. We might be able to look at a grant to pay a good chunk of that. Any other discussion?
I do have one question. I know our street sweeper now has issues. So what's the different kind of capabilities? Sweep the streets.
With existing,
Procure something.
I think we're talking, less than a month versus the year or more, 18 months that we're looking at larger vehicles.
Well, I'll turn to Larry. Do you want this as an action item or a consent agenda item?
I'd like to see it as a action item and possibly see if there's an alternative.
All right, we'll put it as an action item. That is part of the consent agenda. Maybe we won't have a consent agenda, but there's only one. item. Anyway, moving on, we'll go to study session item 2026-17, a resolution approving a non-endowed fund agreement with the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. I'll turn this over to Nick.
Yep. So we've talked a lot about parks today. We have a lot of awesome projects we want to do, whether it be Colbert Park or Jones Park or the rec center. There's something in every park we want to do, and there's only so much money available. So we've started looking into the possibility of creating a Parks Foundation. Creating it from scratch can be a long process. Through creating, not just applying for the 501c3 and the tax exempt and all those sorts of things, but it's creating bylaws, creating boards, having to do all that stuff with staff time. So it is a possibility to do it ourselves, but we've been talking with the Community Foundation and they have expertise in doing this already, not just fundraising, maintaining their own 501c3, but also asset management. If someone wants to will money to us, they know how to handle those sorts of things. If someone wants to donate stocks, they know how to handle those sorts of transfers. If they want to do real estate transfers, all those sorts of things are things that they already know how to do. And so they have a lot of expertise that we don't necessarily have. They do charge a 1.5% fee to be a part of theirs. But the other benefit of being with them is they're a very large fund because they handle nonprofits and government agencies throughout Champaign County. And so those funds grow quickly because they have that large asset management that they're doing. So as we look forward to potentially adding other fundraising opportunities, as we bring on these awesome opportunities to build projects, we think there might be people in our community that want to donate towards that. So this will give them those opportunities and ways to do that. And so we recommend going through the Community Foundation to do this, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about it.
Who has any questions? Joe,
This is a great idea.
any other questions?
No, I support that.
Yep.
Nick, just ask about the is it 1.5% of total assets per year? Is that what the 1.5% is, or is it 1.5% as new funds come in, they take 1.5% off the top?
Of income.
It's of income.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not of managed, it's not an annual.
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm assuming they're investing that in appropriate.
They have a board that determines how they're going to invest everything to maintain those sorts of things. So yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Then the committees.
Just tell me what. So I'm assuming that with the foundation. No. Line item.
No, so there's nothing coming out of taxable money. These would all be donations going into the foundation. We'll start the foundation with $5,000 from the community improvement plan. And then from there, we'll just use donations to build that fund up.
That makes it really hard. Would make it really hard. I'm pro parks.
Mhm.
Am I hitting the wrong thing? Well, I'm new. I haven't been here for a while. Pro parks, and yet I'm anti-property tax increases. So if we can avoid those.
Any issue with making this part of the consent agenda next week? Okay, cool. We'll include this as part of the consent agenda. We are on to item E now, since we've already covered D. We will be 2026-19, a resolution amending the Village of Savoy's personnel policy handbook. And I'll turn this over to Andy.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we regularly do, we've been reviewing our policy manual and we found some low-hanging fruit that we wanted to amend while we had the opportunity. First and foremost, as you know, we use interns when we can at the village. They are a great tool. They provide unbelievable talent at a great price. And so we're very supportive of our interns and the work that they do. We haven't previously had an internship policy. So we wanted to adopt that policy to ensure that not only our interns have the expectations when they come spend time with us, but the management employees who are overseeing those interns know what to expect in their roles as managing the interns. So that's the first one. The second one is amending. So the adoption of an internship policy, that's a new policy. The next one is amending our travel policy to just add some language related to flying local. And what this does effectively is when an employee will be traveling using airfare, they will weigh the costs of flying out of Savoy, CMI, as opposed to flying out of any other airport. They're going to combine the costs of per diem, parking, and airfare. And if that dollar amount is 10% or less, it's within a 10% window, essentially, this will then allow them to travel out of CMI. Of course, we want to support our local airport. We're very fortunate to have such a wonderful regional airport. I will use an example. I'm going to Champaign County first in a couple weeks. I priced my ticket out of Champaign and I priced a ticket out of O'Hare, and the cost of per diem, which I think it's 70 something cents now, as well as extensive parking, I will have somebody drop me off. We by far are cheaper by flying out of Champaign. So this just codifies that and supports our local airport. The last is an additional new policy that our risk management company would like us to have. That's just a return to work policy. It helps clarify and codify when employees are either off work due to personal reasons or work-related issues, what the process looks like when they return to work. And then just a final, as you see, our policy manual actually still has our old logo. So we added this into this amendment to update that as well. So happy to answer any questions related to those policy changes.
After I give you such a hard time. Anyway, we'll move on to study session item 2025-20, a resolution confirming reappointments for board and commissions. Again, these are all just reappointments, as I mentioned before, so I don't know that there's many questions about that, but does anybody have any questions? Okay, and is it okay to include all this as part of consent agenda? Like I said, if anybody, we do have an opening on planning and zoning commission, so if anybody has any recommendations, I'd be happy to consider. So we'll add this to our consent agenda. Ooh, we are done with study session items. Any new business? Okay. Oh,
I'm gonna go ahead and hit my button. As you may have gotten from Wendy today, Samoa is coming up. No.
I'm sorry, that's what we.
23rd, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It will be at in Muhammad, and the mayor and clerk over there, or not the clerk, but the administrator they've been working on setting it up for us. So please support it and it's because Muhammad came in. Muhammad was going to do July and we didn't have anyone to do April. And I probably would have been fired from my spot on the board if I'd volunteered us again. So for a second time in a row. So anyway, we'll bin Muhammad for that.
Okay, Larry?
We still have to talk about the VO stuff. Just want to mention that a full 2 weeks after we last met, the bikes were sitting on, the VO bikes were sitting on Curtis Road. And just want to make mention of that. And also, on a really good note, we really have a wonderful, we all know this, but a wonderful Parks Director and Savoy Rec Center. And this morning, my wife went in there, and in order to scan in, they had a sign up that said, "You have to do the Macarena." And it just puts a smile on everyone's face. And I think everyone that comes out of there has a smile on their face. So just want to say thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We do. We celebrate April Fool's Day pretty hard at the rec center.
Okay, my comments are on the e-bikes and also, of course, those are going to come into our community more, but we also, as technology advances, we have children and others on e-bikes, and in our subdivision, we're seeing quite a bit of it this spring, and it's just going to move forward. So if I could suggest, and maybe I'll ask for a study session with this, but we look at some of the other communities and how they have signage, or if we have, I see guidance from municipalities, Ride Illinois and state of Illinois, where e-bikes aren't supposed to be on sidewalks, but we need to learn more about that and have signage and maybe some public education, because this is how everything's advancing.
Yeah, Larry, I think knows more about this than I do, but Rotary is going to have this big event at the Baptist Church on April 11th. That's where I had my note.
Next week.
You know more about it than I do, and find some new shoes and bring them. Or don't we have a place out here?
We've got a box here. So it's the Central Illinois District Gathering for Rotary, and it's partially sponsored by Savoy, which is great. There's going to be right now, we just counted yesterday 3,264 pairs of shoes that were donated, brand new shoes that were donated, that go through Buckner Company, gets distributed around the world to people, to young people that don't have shoes, can't go to school without shoes. So those will be distributed, and we're going to take all those and make a mountain of those at the First Baptist Church on Saturday at about noon or 1. It goes from noon to 4, and that mountain will be called Mount Vesuvius. And there will be about 80 vendors there. And so anyway, it should be fun. Couple of bouncy houses and fun for all.
And then finally, Eddie Bain's retirement, April 13th. What a guy, what a special person. So be sure to go to that. Thanks.
Righty, I have a feeling that morphed into board remarks. But so we've covered both items at once, 7 and 8. But we do have to enter into closed session. If I get a motion to enter into a closed session pursuant to or 5 LLCS 120/2C21 for discussion of closed session
So
minutes. Is there anything else I should say in this regard? Madam Clerk?
So moved.
Okay,
second.
and we have a motion and a second. If the clerk could take the roll.
Trustees Maverick,
Yes.
Shunkweiler,
Yes.
Donaldson,
Yes.
Mangian. Dykstra,
Yes.
Camphor.
Yes.
President Brown,
Yes.
motion carries.